thank you for joining us here at Confectionery Live. My name is Caitlin. I am the editor of International Confectionery magazine, and today I have the utmost pleasure of being joined here by Bastian Hörmann, the Global Marketing Director of Sweet Food at ADM. Bastian, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. As said, I'm the head of marketing at ADM, and welcome to the audience too. I'm happy to introduce some latest trends in the confectionery industry today from our perspective, and also have some words on how we can translate that into the future of sweet food, all together as partners in that small world of confections around the globe.
Well, thank you for that, Bastian. I think that's a really nice segue into one of the main topics we're here to talk about today, which is confectionery trends. In your experience, what major trends are you seeing at the moment that are influencing the confectionery landscape? And also, what are some of the trends that you see that will be coming to us in the next couple of years?
Now, it's really important to highlight a few of those trends in the confectionery industry that is really also reflecting the market dynamics that we see, especially also in Europe, but also the consumer preferences. And one of them is really indulgence and the sweets as a treat, so to say. This is, it may not sound like a trend because this is what confectionery is there for, but it's still one of the key market drivers. When we go a bit deeper into chocolate, for example, the attribute that counts into that trend is really premiumization. So really the upsell, so to say, of chocolate, premiumize the chocolates, because they have, faced also a lot of challenges in the past years due to the COVID pandemic, but also due to the high inflationary markets in the past. So premiumization and chocolate as a gift for mental well-being, for indulging yourself is one of the key trends. When you pivot to sugar confectionery as itself, this is more the part where it gets more funny. It gets more explorative. So consumers are really seeking that fun part of confections when it comes to sugar confectionery, like exploring new flavors around the world, traveling through taste, discover global taste directions. May it be just the taste as itself, or may it be new ingredients incorporated. So that's really the fun explorative part, which is still driving the sugar confectionery space. And this is also untouched by inflation. Sugar confectionery markets are on a high. Yes, prices are increasing too, but the treat as itself, driven by also nostalgia, is seeing really good growth dynamics around Europe and around the globe. And this is also due to, as I said, nostalgia, the security you get when you indulge yourself with, for example, a well-known brand that you know from your childhood, but also the security you can feel when you're reminded of a little sweet treat you may have gotten as a child, and now you can still enjoy that. And that's driving sugar confectionery, whereas in chocolate confectionery, it's really a premium indulgence and chocolate as a gift.
Thank you for providing an overview on those trends. I think perhaps the main point that we can gauge from that is that chocolate and sugar confectionery is still going to continue to be enjoyed by consumers, and it's great to see that they're continuing to grow. What would your advice be to manufacturers who are trying to make sense of these trends and sort of trying to understand how they can capitalize on them both in the chocolate and sugar confectionery space?
And that's a very good aspect, because what we see from the markets, yes, they are good. They have good growth perspectives, but still they are very saturated around the globe. And then it really comes down to how can we spark new interest with consumers? How can we maybe reformulate recipes to spark new interest from consumers? But also, how can we take advantage of some sub-trends that are ongoing in the industry, like health and well-being, moving into sugar confectionery, seeing gummies being the format between fun and functionality, really with new startups in the space, new functionalities coming in. So this is really where manufacturers need to pay attention to what ingredients, what functionality can I bring into, but what is also resonating with the consumer to not overstretch that trend too much. And then it really comes down to partnerships in the industry, like where do I get my information from? Is there a partner that is understanding how to incorporate new ingredients, functional ingredients, maybe also new taste directions, to still make my confection, my sweet or my brand taste perfect for the consumer, is having that functionality, but is still providing that, I would say, anchor trend, nostalgia or premium indulgence for both of the subsegments of confectionery. So I would say the collaboration in the industry, in that eco-space of confection, is really important when it comes down to finding new recipes, new ingredients, and how to make that work in my brand, in my product that I want to launch in the market.
Yeah, there are certainly a lot of questions I can imagine from the perspective of manufacturer, particularly if it's a new and emerging trend, sort of understanding that. Earlier, Bastian, you alluded to inflation there and there being challenges. In your experience, have you found confectionery manufacturers are looking at new trends, but perhaps they're a little bit hesitant because they're already facing quite high costs associated with producing?
I mean, beside facing challenges in the market environment, and I mean, I can imagine manufacturers, they need to pay attention to their production sites, how they source, and so on. I mean, that has been a challenge for all of us in the industry. But beside that, I mean, still looking into the future, and not 5 to 10 years ahead, already 2 to 3 years ahead. Yes, there have been headwinds, and we all were faced together in that. But now we are seeing also tailwinds again, like the growth spaces in the subsegments, like, as I said, health and well-being, for example, or when we also think of sugar confectionery as itself, in the market high. Yes, prices are going up, but the market is going up too. We're seeing that turn around, and that is where that proactive development is still very, very important, because also with new innovations sparking new interest with consumers, you also can, I would say, lower a bit the impact of other market environments or other market impacts, feeding into innovation then. Yeah,
definitely. On the subject of health and wellness, we've, as a trend, we've sort of seen interest around it really, really grow. How have you seen health and wellness manifest with regards to sort of products that you've seen being launched on the market?
That is an interesting point, because we have seen really a lot in the past years, and that can come from fiber inclusion, protein inclusion. It can be pro and postbiotics that we've seen in a lot of, I would say, typical confectionery formats. As said, the gummies itself, they are really the bridge between fun and functionality. But what we have seen in general, it's more occasional, driven by the consumer's choice. When it comes down to different health and wellness attributes, like mental well-being, again, indulgence is playing a key role, like indulging yourself after a stressful day with some nice chocolate inclusions, maybe even taste directions of lavender, which is known for unleashing the stress, so to say, has become really important to and a playground for manufacturers to really capture on that trend. And then I would say the others are going a bit more into reformulation and upselling, like, as I said, fiber inclusion, protein inclusion, making it a bit more healthier when it comes to healthy snacking too. This is for chocolate, maybe even for chocolate bars. That has been a playground. And on the sugar confectionery side, when it comes to gummies, a lot of startups provided additional functionality to well-being, relieving stress, helping with sleeping, for example, and on the other side, mental well-being in general, with that more fun and explorative taste directions and global discovery. So that's really, I think the occasions are key when it comes how to interpret that trend and how to formulate recipes accordingly to that. it's also the ingredients, but it's the occasion that is driving consumers' interests.
You mentioned trends like fiber inclusion, and I imagine sugar reduction fits in there with making a product healthier. What would you say are some of the challenges for manufacturers who are trying to produce and develop reduced sugar products, clean label products, things like that?
I mean, when we talk about that favorite play field of confectionery, it's all about taste and texture. Taste and texture is really the most important attribute of those products, and that's why consumers are retained to their purchases and to their favorite brands. For example, it's the taste and the texture they know. And as soon as you reformulate or you premiumize or you have some inclusions and are adding fibers or proteins in specific, you need to make sure the taste and the texture is still maintained, because that well-being attributes, so to say, might spark the interest, but might not retain the consumer. Taste and texture is, and that is the key challenge for manufacturers when developing new recipes with new ingredients, functional ingredients, maintaining taste and texture at first, really to also maintain their consumers' interests.
Yeah, I think it's a hugely important point, and it's one that people definitely do emphasize. Taste and texture has to come first and has to be prioritized. It's perhaps maybe more of a general question, Bastian, but how do you think manufacturers can go about balancing, having a good tasting chocolate while it being low in sugar?
And that might be one of the holy grails, especially when it comes to sugar reduction, like really rebalancing that. And what we've seen during the last years, and also conducting different consumer research on what is really sugar reduction for you. Is that sugar-free? Is that sugar reduced? Is that alternative sugar? Is that a more natural halo around that? What does this really mean when there's no government regulation in place, for example, which is more the intrinsic need to reformulate? And then it gets interesting, what consumers tell when it comes to sugar reduction, because what we have seen in the confectionery space, consumers are turning away from sugar-free as itself, as long as it's not a medicated confection. I would exclude that from it. But it's really artificial sweeteners are really at the maybe even blacklist in the meanwhile from a consumer perspective. Also seeing countries and states around the globe, like California did this now with the new regulation on artificial sweeteners, that artificial angle and E-numbers and clean label is also key for sugar reduction. So reducing sugar with artificial sweeteners might not be the ideal pathway for the future. It's really how you can achieve that with natural ingredients, clean label ingredients, clean ingredients that the consumer is understanding. But then also, what is the right sugar level? And do you need to call that out? Is it more like with fruit sweeteners, more natural sugars? It's lower in sugar than you might be, but that's really challenges manufacturers are facing, and where we try to partner up with them, understanding their consumer personas, their brand, their formulation, and then helping to find the right, I would say, solution to sugar reduction. As I said, rebalancing the formulation, in the end also rebuilding it a bit, really rebuilding that formulation to, again, back to taste and texture, maintaining this, but providing a more health halo, I would say.
Yeah, there were a couple of things in there that you mentioned that I think are really interesting. So with regards to the manufacturer, finding the ingredient that works for them and that works with their process, but also perhaps, would you say, the familiarity of an ingredient plays the part, particularly when we look at consumers and talk about consumers checking the back of pack labeling more often these days?
Exactly, and this is really when we talk about the future of confectionery, or even some future products on the market. I mean, what is coming from the North American market is allulose that is used a lot to really reduce sugar. I mean, it's not permitted in Europe yet, that might be out there. This is something where we also focusing our research on, like, is this really the way to go? And if yes, for which subsegments of confectionery, for which customers is that suitable? Or is it something else that it's more resonating with consumers, like natural fruit sweeteners that provide a bit more sweetening intensity to cut down the sugar in the formulation? Is it really reduced sugar syrups, for example, that we can provide to customers, and helping reducing the sugar on the label list, but not excluding sugar from a sugar confectionery, because that's nearly impossible. And that's also what we see from a consumer perspective. Everybody is really aware of what confectionery is. It's a sweet treat, and it's treated like that. Everybody's aware that it contains a few calories and a little bit of sugar and a lot other things. But that's known, and then that's okay if it's part of a balanced diet, and that's the key thing. And that is also where, as said, we are partnering up with our industry partnerships, and try to find out what is really the balance that is needed for that recipe, for that market, and what is maybe the ingredient that could work to reformulate, rebalance, and rebuild.
I think sometimes it's worth almost taking a step back and going, for instance, you're trying a reduced sugar chocolate recipe, but also you have to be aware, for instance, if you're selling to the European market, what the regulation is around the sugars and how much sugar to use, and just to take a step back and go, well, this is a challenge, and it might take a lot of trial and error. Would you say that's sort of been your experience working with customers?
I mean, working with our partners in the industry, trial and error is sure something that we try to avoid with them when it comes to market launches. But what we can offer them is trial and error in our customer innovation centers. Like, hey, let's spend a ton of work together and then find out really the right balance, the right level that you really, as you said, need for that specific market, for that specific subcategories. Because we all know there's Nutri-Score in place, there's the HFSS regulation. In the Middle Eastern countries, we have syntaxes on some products, not specifically confectionery, but on some products. And this will still be the way that governments are treating global obesity. It is a fact that is one challenge for the global population. But then helping finding the balance again, and the reformulation approach again, to develop accordingly and launch accordingly to those regulations, no matter which country or continent it is on the globe.
I think the Nutri-Score is a very interesting point, because it will soon be becoming stricter in how it assesses products with health claims. Do you anticipate that having a big impact on manufacturers with products with health claims?
I think so, and not only the ones with health claims, also the one that try to reformulate with artificial sweeteners again, for example. So we are looking a lot into this and into the new formulation guidances, so to say, and also trying to find a sweet spot where we can really help maybe reformulate all already launched Nutri-Score products, maintaining the same Nutri-Score, or even improving the Nutri-Score from a C to B, or even to an A sometimes, but more in the middle area. So that is really something that for certain manufacturers in the industry, that will be a challenge because of the solutions that have been provided the last 2 to 3 years. But there's also solutions for the futures. It's just another close partnership that is needed, and a formulation that needs to be according to the new regulations, so to say.
Yeah, definitely. That close collaboration, which you're stressing, is so important. No matter what part in the supply chain you are, the value chain. At ADM, I'd be interested to hear from you what some of the ingredients you've looked at when reformulating products to be clean label or reduced sugar, for instance.
So there's As mentioned, I mean, as ADM, we're looking into different aspects of the of nature, and then trying to extract the best from the raw material that we can source around the globe for our partners. When it comes really to sugar production or formulation, that can be typical glucose syrups, or syrups in general from corn, that we can help innovating around to reduce the sugar itself, really the sugar on the ingredient list, the sugar content as itself. But then it comes also on to the natural side, the more clean label side, like fruit juices, fruit extracts that can be used to reduce sugar on the one side to a certain extent, but also having that clean label aspect. In confectionery, also still some extracts like stevia can be one of the great additions to a recipe, which is still perceived as quite natural compared to other sweeteners at food space, and in the meanwhile also has I would say a certain sophistication how you can blend and develop such a product with less off taste, a great sweetening impact, and in the end still a clean label. Other syrups like agave syrups might be applicable for certain countries where consumers are knowing that. I mean, it's known as a tabletop sweetener since years already, but now it's also available for manufacturers to be used in confectionery products. And with mentioning agave, it's also carob extract that can be used, other fruit juices that can be used, and also fibers that can reduce sugar. So fibers can reduce sugar. Our partners know that already, but can also act as a bulk ingredient. And when it comes to formulation in confectionery, replacing sugar as a bulk, that is still the sweet spot where we are trying to find the best recipes and the best solutions.
Definitely, and it's really interesting to hear from you just how much exploration is going on. I mean, earlier you said, in the sugar confectionery space, consumers are becoming more explorative, but it sounds like for the manufacturers and companies such as yourselves, you're also becoming more explorative, which is very interesting to hear about. Finally, I just wanted to ask you about sustainability, that major talking point. How do you see it influencing on trends, and do you think the current trends we're seeing right now are fitting into this push for more sustainable solutions in confectionery?
And that is a very, I would say, broad field at the moment for confectionery, because we see a lot sustainability claims being already out there, naming Rainforest Alliance and all those things. But also regenerative agriculture is one of the key aspects in the food and beverage industry in general. When it comes to the consumer perception in confections, I would say sustainability is not yet at the forefront of the claims or the forefront of the attribute that is really needed to spark consumers' interests. Whereas for sure supply chains are, but sustainability as a claim is not yet of interest compared to other subsegments of the food industry, like meat alternative, plant-based dairy alternatives, for example. There is much more important. But on the other side, there is a product and solutions pipeline, I would say, and also actions taken, because I mean, sustainability is not only for the consumer. Sustainability is really for us as a global population, and to preserve nature in the best way we can for the next generation. That is key, and that is why there is a lot of development ongoing. May it be sustainable supply chains for the typical ingredients coming from corn, for example, or the sugar beet is also one example. So that is something which is ongoing, but a bit more in the background. So not at a consumer forefront. It's really in the background where we as a B2B industry are partnering up since years already to make supply chains more sustainable. Maybe not directly claiming that, but ensuring that we preserve nature for the next generation, and that we can set up also the industry solutions to the next 5, 10, 100 years. And whenever the the tip point is coming for the consumers and we talk about claims and sustainability attributes in confectionery products, then we have the solutions in place. And then we can also use that to position confectionery product differently. But at the moment, as we see, sustainability is very important, but not when a consumer is buying a confectionery product. At the moment, when it comes to sugar confectionery, cocoa is a bit different based on the past topics around cocoa supply chains, but that's a different field where we are also not the experts on cocoa raw materials. Yeah.
Well, that's very interesting. Thank you, Bastian. And thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me at Confectionery Live and for highlighting some of the trends that you see in the confectionery space.
It was a pleasure. And I mean, it's great to see that also the audience is very interested in foreseeing those trends and learning those trends. There is much coming in the confectionery industry the next years, and we are happy to partnering up and also deep diving into each trend and how that can really be a success in the market and help us all growing that confectionery market out there.
Definitely. Thank you, Bastian.
Thank you, Caitlin.